always talked about for the past 3 years. It has been talked about. Should the college football playoffs expand next year? All right, should they expand? I'm on the side of yes, and only to 6 teams. And I'm going to give you a few reasons. We're going to look back at the past 3 years on why 6 teams would have just been better, especially this year. Now, I'm not being biased towards any team here, but there is no perfect system. We'll get that. And even with 6 teams, or if we go to 8 teams, some fan base, multiple fan bases are always going to be upset. Whether it's a 7th and 8th seed, or it's a 9th and 10th seed, 11th seed, someone is going to be upset. There is no perfect system to the playoffs. But I believe 6 is as close as possible to perfect that we could get. Based on the recent years, based on this year, I believe that we found a system. Now, there is no criteria for making the playoffs. It really isn't. The only criteria, if there is one, is brand name and what have you done for the past 2-3 weeks at the end of the season. That's it. It no longer matters if you won a conference championship, because that was the main thing the first year. That's why TCU dropped from 3 to 6 the last week, even though they won by 40-plus points in their last game. Now, granted, Ohio State should have been in. Yes, that's fine. I'm not going to debate this anymore. But that was told the last week, oh, yeah, you had to win a conference championship. Then this year, you didn't have to win a conference championship. You didn't. Ohio State's in. Granted, they played pretty well. They had a good schedule. I'm not arguing any of this, but I'm just saying what I am arguing is there is no criteria to make it into the playoffs unless you just have a brand name, undefeated, or how you look the past few weeks towards the end of the season. That's it. You don't have to win a conference championship. So the Big 12, or creating that Big 12 championship, hoping that could boost them in there, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because had Oklahoma beat Ohio State and they only had one loss to Houston, we have a pretty big debate. And that means Ohio State shouldn't have gotten in. It would have been Oklahoma. Even though Oklahoma's a little bit lower, it would be like, well, they're a conference champion. They beat Ohio State, a pretty good team. Why aren't they in? So I know I'm throwing out hypotheticals and stuff like that, but I'm just saying there is no criteria. So what else have we got here? We already talked about last year or the year. The reason for the 6 teams, we'll jump straight into it. 8 is just too much. If you look at the past years, 8 is just way too much. And with these players not being paid, which is a completely different discussion, it kills conference championship games. Whether now, I know we just said it doesn't matter if you win it now, but it takes away any sort of reason to actually get to one or win one, because there's 8 seeds and playing extra games. It's too much for college football. I know the FCS, they probably play more. It doesn't matter. For FBS, for Division I FBS, 8, it's just too much. It's just too much. It kills conference championships. It doesn't make sense. 6, perfect. You keep the conference championship. You keep it where it is important to win it still, and you still have good games. So this is how it would work. 1 and 2 seeds, they get the bye week. They deserve it. They deserve 1 and 2 seeds get the bye week. They're the top 2 teams in college football. Then you have 3 versus 6. Obviously, 3 would host the game at their stadium. This is not a neutral site. So that's where it gets a little bit fun. And then 4 and 5, 4 host the game. They go at it. So it still becomes that 4-team playoff that we get that first week. Obviously, this all happens after the conference championship game. And then after that, we would have our Final Four. And then we would move it to like the bowl games like we have right now, where Peach Bowl, Orange Bowl, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and Fiesta Bowl, they all rotate yearly, right? So it keeps the same. It's just that first week. 1 and 2 gets the bye week. 3 and 6 go at it. 4 and 5 go at it. 3 and 4, they host the game at their stadium. So I don't care if it's Western Kentucky hosting against Ohio State. It's not about brand. It's about the best teams. even though probably the committee will still switch it where it wouldn't be like that. But I'm just saying the third seed and the fourth seed, they would host that game. It wouldn't be at a neutral site. So if you're not sold by that yet, which I'm kind of shocked that you wouldn't be, I feel like that's pretty solid. So let's talk about past years. Let's talk about why 6 teams would have worked out these 3 years, and how much we take away from the argument. Again, it's not perfect. Fan bases are still going to be upset, but not as upset as they were with this 4. And granted, 4 was a great start. We got rid of the BCS system. Great. 4 teams is a great start. It's time to change it. So in 2014, the biggest problem was TCU, dropping from the 3rd seed to the 6th seed, winning by 40-plus points that last week, putting up a great performance. It wasn't like they were just bad and played awful. No. Now, Ohio State, they win the Big Ten. They defeat Wisconsin. They shellac them 59 points, right? It's bad. Ohio State deserves to be in. TCU still deserve to be in. So instead of 4 teams, we have 6, and this is what would have happened. These are the original rankings. I didn't change the rankings here at all. This was the final rankings. Alabama was number 1. Oregon was number 2. They have bye weeks. Agree? Cool. If you disagree on that, you need to look back at that year. TCU would be the 6th seed since they had dropped. They would travel to Tallahassee to take on number 3 seed Florida State. That's a solid matchup. That's a really good matchup. I think we can all agree we'd like to see that. Then number 5 seed Baylor would travel to Columbus to take on Ohio State, right? That's a pretty good matchup. I think we could all agree we would love those matchups rather than what we got of the Oregon blowout of Florida State in the Rose Bowl and then Alabama being, well, that was still a great game. Ohio State, we probably still would have got that too. Yeah, because if Ohio State would have won, and that would mean Florida State winning. Anyways, okay. The 7th and 8th seeds were Mississippi State with 2 losses, or they both were with 2 losses, and Michigan State with 2 losses as well. I think we can all agree 7 and 8, they didn't deserve. None of those teams should have switched with Baylor and or TCU. Both Baylor and TCU split the Big 12. They were both Big 12 champions. Both only had 1 loss. Obviously, TCU's loss was to Baylor, and Baylor's loss was to West Virginia, who still ended up in, I believe, the top 25 that year. Mississippi State didn't win the SEC. Michigan State didn't win the Big Ten. I think we can all agree here that those top 6 seeds, Alabama, Oregon, Florida State, Ohio State, Baylor, and TCU, were the best 6 teams and would have made a great playoffs rather than just having 4, and it's like, wow, we just kind of screwed 2 teams. So I don't think there's really any argument there, and I think we're all excited for a great playoff schedule and a great system. Those are great matchups. TCU at Florida State, Baylor at Ohio State. One of those goes on to take on Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, Oregon in the Rose Bowl. I think we could all agree that would be great. All right, so let's move on. There's no real controversial discussion there. If you think there is, if you really think Mississippi State and or Michigan State deserves to be in more than TCU or Baylor, I'm sorry. All right, 2015. Now, maybe this is the real year for controversial talks. This is where we really get into it, where maybe 8 teams would have been best because we had so many great teams. So, again, it was Clemson number 1, Alabama number 2. They get the bye weeks. 6th seed would have been Stanford at Michigan State in East Lansing. Pretty good matchup. They were number 3 seed. 5 was Iowa. They would travel to Norman and take on number 4 Oklahoma. Here's the problem. We had the 7th seed, which was Ohio State, and 8th seed Notre Dame. Now, I don't think Notre Dame deserved to be in that year, but Ohio State makes a case. Stanford, 2 losses. Ohio State, 1 loss. Ohio State's 1 loss, Michigan State, who was the 3rd seed. Stanford, 2 losses to no one in the top 8. Ooh. So I think maybe the committee would have looked at it and said, if they knowing that there would have been 6 teams only in, I think they would have switched Ohio State and Stanford. So then we would have had a rematch of Ohio State at Michigan State, and Stanford would have been the 7th seed. And that would have been very controversial. Who goes in, who doesn't, with that last seed. But that's really it. But it's very controversial. 8 teams, then we probably would have been like, okay, we got the best 8, because 9 and 10, I don't think we're that good anyways, or deserved it. So there's that. Finally, this year, Alabama 1, Clemson number 2. They have bye weeks again. So number 6 would have been Michigan at Ohio State, a rematch of the game 2. That would have been fun to see. Then you have number 5, Penn State, traveling to number 4, Washington in Seattle. That's a pretty good game. Now, this is where this one kind of becomes a problem. 7, Oklahoma seed. They're the real talker. They're the Big 12 champion. And I believe if the committee knowing, again, if this would have been just 6 seeds, I think Oklahoma jumps Michigan. I know the ratings and everybody wanting to see the game 2 would have been up and really worth it. But Oklahoma's a Big 12 champion. They're a Power 5 conference champion. Michigan is not. They didn't even make the championship game. Everybody else, Alabama conference champion, Clemson conference champion, Penn State's a conference champion, Washington's a conference champion. Ohio State isn't, but they played pretty well. Deserve to be in. But Oklahoma is a Big 12 champion. Both have 2 losses. Both to Ohio State, and then Oklahoma lost to Houston. Michigan had a worse loss to Iowa. Granted, it was by 1 point. It was on the road, but it was Iowa, not a Houston team. So that would give us a Oklahoma team traveling to Columbus in a rematch of an early season matchup, and I think it would be fine. I think it would still be a good matchup. I think we could all be happy with it. Maybe some controversial. But overall, I think we can all then agree we have a great system, a really good system where we have all Power 5 conference champions in it, and we have 2 of the other best teams in it, right? We played a good schedule. We dominated the league, the conference. Did really good. Had a couple losses, tough losses. But overall, we have the 6 best teams. 4 teams is way too short. It's leaving someone who actually can win it all out of it. 8 teams is just too much. It gets a little ridiculous of having too many teams. We still get great matchups. There's still going to be people complaining, but not as much. Not as much. You don't upset that many. It continues to make money, of course, and it doesn't disqualify or get rid of or hurt the conference championships in any way. And I think we can all be happy with 6 teams. Let me know in the comment section if you believe the college football playoffs should expand. And if so, 6, 8 teams, keep it at 4, 16, 64 teams. Maybe we just go an entire season where it's just playoffs. It's just playoffs. Week 1, playoff game right there. You lose, you're done. Go to FCS and play somebody. No, I'm just kidding. Tweet me at Short Sports Show. Let me know in the comment section down below.